Hi folks, I'm live with Raquel Buchanan, and she does have her surname on YouTube. You've got a YouTube channel. I think it's Therapy with Raquel. And if people search for Raquel Buchanan, and so what's I think an interesting case, and this is just going off something that we were mentioning before we came in, and I think that, and you were talking about abusive people. I was thinking that if you try to change people, where if the person's ESTP, it's like if you to change them to somebody outside their type. Whereas if you have a model of what does a really healthy ESTP look like, that's easier to get them to that place rather than to turn them into an NF and like super enlightened. And so I can give you an example of Richard Bandler, where he's still very ESTP and he's still very expedient, but he gave it examples of his kid. He was forcing his kid to learn to swim, and he used some expedient tactics. And so he would say things like, "Be comfortable, or I'll dunk you." Like these, like INFPs, like they would go, "Oh my god, this is such a domineering parent." He would do things like bring the other kids around to call him a sissy. He would throw silver dollars into the pool to see if they'll go and get them. So like these are like hardcore tactics, but they have a good intent. Another one, this goes really far, and this is an example of how ESTPs can be really expedient. He was using this is from a tape in the early 80s, and he was talking about women with anorexia, and he was using hardcore techniques like having guys outside her room talking about how unattractive they found skinny women, and actually mention her. And so he sort of said things like, "Look, these people are about to die. They're so thin. What can we do?" So to me, that's an example of where somebody's still very ESTP, but they're relatively healthy. What do you think of those tactics, Raquel? Is it a little bit much? Or?
I guess they're quite paradoxical in a way. I can't say, well, let's think about this. I can't say I know I wouldn't personally use those tactics. I'm more of a compassionate person. Although we have known that prescribing the symptom has been helpful before. I don't know. That's kind of crazy. It makes me think though about what's that word? It's intricate, yes, of personality, and how you begin to think like, when is it that personality begins to form? So that kid you're talking about that has to fetch pennies from the pool and stuff like that, like, experience creates personality, but I wonder at which extent it gets kind of pressed in stone, because like that kid, I guess, I don't know if you really change a person, or was that kid already like that?
There's something I should have mentioned in terms of that makes Bandler look a little bit nicer, in that I think in the time they were in Hawaii, and he was saying that it's actually more dangerous to swim in the shallower waters, because if you do that on a beach in Hawaii, you could get really injured from the rocks and things. And so he wanted the kids to be in the deeper water. So there's little things that are thrown in. It's where
saying like,
yeah,
we're kind of saying like, oh, the INFP kid wouldn't be able to handle that or whatever.
That's the thing. Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I reckon. That would traumatize them, and that they would be completely cooperative. So it's like in that example, you can see that's sort of like the pros and cons of ESTP, where really expedient action, but also not really understanding maybe the psychology of people and how they vary.
Okay, so I had a supervisor back a couple years ago, and he was like really big on personality types. And he was actually doing, he was focusing on a dissertation that was about personality types and neuroses. So he was saying how, like, if you score high on the scale for neuroticism, you your two primary functions, if you were to take a test also, it comes up differently, right? Because the presence of neuroses. So like it could be possible that the child, out of their foundational personality type, exhibits other characteristics of another type or different because of the way that they're coping with a traumatic situation.
Yeah,
You kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, and that also made me think where those tactics by Bandler, now it might have just been a story, but I could imagine loads of parents who would try those tactics, and actually from the outside it would be, look, you're traumatizing this child.
Right.
And
But to build character, to build perseverance, right?
Yeah.
However, you don't know what you're actually building in that child and what they're taking away from it because of their perception. They're like, okay, so there are only 5 personality characteristics that have been genetically connected, right? That are passed from parent to child. Only 5 of them. Only 5 of them. They're the big 5. Yep. Right? So that would be things like introversion, and it's not extroversion. It's a scale to which you are introverted. You're either you're really introverted or not introverted at all. One of them was anxiety-based and neuroticism. One of them was callous and emotional trait. There was 2 more, but I always forget what the two other ones are. I'd have to look them up.
I remember it as ocean for the big 5.
Openness to experience. Okay, that's one of them. And then there's another one.
Conscientiousness.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Right. So we have these genetically passed down traits, and so that gives a child a predisposition for, I don't know, feeling or not being a feeler, or being extroverted, introverted, whatever. So you have that type, and then from the day that the kid is born, they start parenting. But let's say that your kid, because it's 50% you and 50% the other person, is actually at their root a really feeling type, like INFP from when they're born. I'm doing extremes here. And that's how they're processing this discipline. So it's being processed differently than a person who's ESTP or whatever. And in the future, when you ask them, for example, because how did I get into this field? I come from an interesting family. So we were actually talking about this the other day, about the lessons that my parents were trying to teach me, and they actually did them in a pretty similar manner to what you're talking about. And fast forward 20 years later, I don't remember the lesson. I only remember the feeling.
Ah, yes.
Right. And you were trying to make me be, my mom is ESFJ. My mom is ESFJ. I'm ENFJ. We are very different. She was trying to teach me responsibility by being overly in everything, over and everything, very much OCD like. I still didn't learn that quality. What I remember later is the feeling associated to that.
Yeah, and then now a good person for you, a wicked person for you in terms of wicked good. Tom Condon, because he started with NLP, and he talks about how with various Enneagram types you can become like unconscious defense mechanisms. And I think maybe you talked about the 3. Maybe they were the kid where they were an older child and they were like a surrogate parent. These various things that Tom Condon talks about. I think like he talks about feel better defenses and feel worse defenses and feel nothing defenses. And so he was talking about things like, I think the 4 and the 6 will feel worse. And I think he said the 6 does it in order to push them into action, whereas the 7 will sweep things under the carpet to make themselves feel about and not tackle the problem and rationalize and look at their problem, you know, as if from the moon, like using his terms, like, and not a lot of rationalization, not dealing with it. And the 4 likes to wallow in melancholy, and they actually can be they can get addicted to therapy because they find the connection with their therapist who sees them.
Oh, maybe that's why I became a therapist, just to connect with all my clients.
Well, it works positively, it works in a positive way. I think he was talking about the feel nothing defenses for maybe the 3, maybe the 8, and maybe the 9, when the 9 becomes invisible. Right then, so folks, basically we're filling because Sanna has not arrived. So I'm thinking that Raquel, if you give us your sort of life story in therapy and how you got into it and the various. But although we've only got about 5 minutes left,
I can stretch it. I'll just speed up.
And then that would be enough information that when Sanna sees it, she could maybe ask you some questions based off that for next time. So yeah. So basically, the reason we did that stuff about Richard Bandler, who's got this reputation, I call him Tricky Dicky. And so, for example, he would do things like call himself Dr. Richard Bandler when he doesn't have a PhD or a doctorate. And it's like, so, but as what we said there, very expedient, works in some cases, could be traumatic for others because they expect other people to toughen up like them. So yeah, over to you, Raquel.
Everybody always asks me about how and why I became a therapist. And for some reason, I still feel like I don't even really know. It just sort of happened. So I guess my answer varies depending upon the person as well. My brother asked me, so I'll give you the most like intimate explanation. My brother asked me because my brother is also ENFJ and he's at a place in his life where he doesn't know what he wants to do either. But man, is he good with people. And not only is he good with people, he is good at psychology and understanding social dynamics. And he is really good at working his way up ladders. At 18 years old, he got his first job, and within 6 months, he was the assistant manager at a store. Like, I mean, he's really good at this stuff. So I was telling my brother that I have just been really good at talking to people, at listening to people. People come to me and talk to me. I seek out people and I ask them questions ever since I was little. And I've always been told that I was good with people. I also, because of the things that I've experienced in my life, it has given me a lot of compassion for other people. I can understand people's wrongdoings. I understand why people engage in things that cause problem for them and other people. And I do believe from my own experience that these people can change. So I guess there was a part of me that was already like, I guess, wanting to give from my own experience, I suppose. So then when I got into high school, and I also had all these other interests too, but they were also very social in nature as well. It would be cool to be a Dr. Phil. I love Dr. Phil, watching him on Oprah when I was like in high school. So I get to high school and sometimes high schools will have trade programs. And I was able to participate in what was called peer assistance leaders. And we were conflict mediators for kids in our school. So I sat in on a few sessions. I got trained in conflict management at like 16. I attended interpersonal communication courses and seminars and things like that. And I started there. I went into college and also went through my own dark time, my melancholy, my 4 staying in depression. Oh, woe is me, whatever. So I go into college and I said, and I went for what was easiest. And I go, you know what? Psychology will be easy. It will be like applicable to a bunch of things, and I'm just going to do it. So then I took some psychology courses, which it turned out to actually be harder than I thought when you really get into it. But I still understood it. I still understood what was going on, and I had a better grasp over that stuff than anything else. And then I graduated with a bachelor's degree, and I knew there were a couple of things that played a role in that. I didn't want to pay back my student loans yet, so I was like, I should probably get a master's degree. And I was just led to marriage and family therapy. It just so happens they were enrolling when I needed to be enrolled in, and they required what I had. And I got into that, and I was a natural. I was like really good at it. Marriage and family therapy was even easier than the psychology degree, and I just did it so well. I just did it really well. So here I am 6 years later, still working on licensure to be a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. And yeah, here I am just doing it.
So I'll just give some folks some background on Kersey and Behrens, because this will help this. So for instance, this was on the back of the original Please Understand Me Too, which came out in 1978. I think David West Kersey, so Kersey Sr. was born in 1921. And so this is some information on the back of this book, because it doesn't put it on the other one about, where does it say about they are trainers? Because it's backwards for me. At some point, does it say something like the authors of this book are there? I think it's something up here.
The authors are trainers, therapists, and diagnosticians of dysfunctional behavior at California State University. Oh, Fullerton. Hey, that's where I'm from. Impatient with the maturity. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Freud stuff. That's fun. Erickson, developmental.
Yeah. So I think that's a different Erickson from Milton. So
lots of them.
So there's lots of stuff in here about children. There's because this is related, folks, because this is Kersey's background. So he's got parenting various children. So it's like they're probably like the different tactics to use. And he came up with the thing where the best thing to use with in his point of view was not really punishing children, but abuse it, lose it. And then something that you said before, with dynamics with people, it made me think of this, interaction styles, which is something that, well, this was the first one that Linda Behrens came up with. And Dario Nardi actually uses this to type people. Once they got the temperament, and then you got the interaction style.
You have a lot of books.
Yeah, but I've not read them all, though. If I was a 5, I'd be dangerous. I would have read them all. So, so what happens is, so for example, I'll talk a bit about the NFs. People might think, Ben, why are you talking about this when you're talking about counselling? Oh no, well, Sanna here's probably a peer. One thing I will say to her is, try entering through Gmail your Gmail account. Right, so I'll say something about interaction style and how this can, right, so for the NFs, you've got directive and informant. NFJ is a directive. It makes sense. They see the goal, they value extroverted sensor, they've got the NI, directive. And Kersey would say there's a natural predisposition towards mentoring people. He thinks that for the ENFJ, they're better with groups. INFJ are better one-to-one. He sees the NFPs as informing. And well, it makes sense with the NE. Lots of options. You might do this, you might do that. They don't want to push people because they don't like the extroverted sensor. And he would describe so somebody like your type, he would call them a preemptive initiator. Linda Behrens would call that type in charge. Because they're expressive and the director. So it's almost like the leader of the NFs. But they do it in a more charismatic way. I think it's like they do it in a way that makes people want to do it. Rather the other ones, it might be begrudgingly. So the idea is that each temperament has a sort of an in-charge type. So amongst the SJs, it's ESTJ. Amongst the NTs, it's ENTJ. And amongst the SPs, it's ESTP. And so Carol Linden has taught interaction styles. And so that then becomes important with, well, if you've got someone who's a certain interaction style, someone who's directive, and then you've got someone who's informang, they're going to clash.
Here's the thing. If I ever said, here, come follow me, you know who's coming with me? No one. It's almost like, and I swear, anytime I've ever tried to really sell anything to someone, it doesn't work. It's more so that it's when I'm not trying that I look over and someone's clinging to my leg. I'm like, why are you following me? Like, I didn't ask you to. Or I'll be talking about something just in general. And I guess it's the charisma in whatever I'm talking about. And someone will be like, hey, can I have that?
Right.
I'll take one of those. And I'm like, what? I did not try. Like, I don't know what personality type that is, but I wish I could be that personality type who goes in with the intention of selling and can sell it. It's not me. I'm not that one.
Yeah, that Kersey would say that's the promoter. Like, they'll just say whatever, like Trump, this is the greatest economy ever. And then a couple of years ago, this is the worst economy ever. It's like they have, if you can say like a bold-faced lie, very direct, people confuse somebody being direct with somebody being honest. Because usually with a politician, they will prevaricate and dodge the issues. But if you just say straight out, well, he's being honest, he's being direct, he's being honest. That sounds like straight talk. It is straight talk, but it's not necessarily the truth. I think there's a book that people might help that I've not got. I have got, but I've not read. The Charisma Myth. And so yours might be the charisma of vision. And then there's also the charisma of presence.
Mm.
And then there's also, I think, something like having the other person. I've not even read the chapter summaries at the back. That is terrible of me. I mean, for a lazy reader, I should have at least read the chapter summaries. So let's see if there's been any follow-up on... Because what's interesting is we mentioned Richard Bandler at the start and how like that was extreme. But Milton Erickson, he sort of did that on a more subtle level, being direct with people and tricking them a little bit. So have you looked a little bit more into Erickson and some of his tactics?
Was that the guy you originally, because to be honest, when you told me about that one therapist who was quite paradoxical in his way and also used hypnosis.
Yeah, that's him.
Oh, yeah, dude, I love that guy, man. I have not done any more research. I mean, I looked on the Wikipedia page. I looked a little bit in the links and stuff like that, but I am in between reading some other books, but it was interesting, and perhaps it'll come up in my licensing test, and I will thank you when it does, because I'll know who it is. But what I read in summary was I like his approach. I like using obscurity to throw people off to make them more suggestible.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You are a natural. I remember you saying, I am Milton Erickson.
Yeah, pretty much. It's so funny because I think this also falls into where I have an open mind about anything. And one day I'll be on one position and the next day I'll be on another position. And people are like, what? And I'm like, oh, whatever. You know, you never know what I believe. And I think it really helps with being a blank slate so that people have to think about their own stuff.
Now, you've already talked about NLP on your channel in that short video that's really good about the emotional vocabulary. This book really is about the meta model, but it's about how to use it properly, not to use it to pick people up on all the mistakes that they make. So really, all the while, all people, it's like just annoy everybody. And Richard Bandler, in one of his early videos, was saying that, because what he does is he'll teach people stuff where it's just to get them to do the exercise. And then in later classes, he'll explain why he sort of fooled people a little bit. And he said that those were supposed to be just exercises to get people to notice the errors. The idea was to see from their meta violations how they're deleting, distorting, and generalizing information. It's not to pick them up, it's just to see what the issue is around things. This is another good book, The Enneagram in NLP. And it's about...
I don't know why what you just said reminds me of this intervention I do. And it's a communication intervention where, like, you tell one person to not listen at all and to do everything they can do to make it look like they're not listening. And then you tell the other person to tell this long drawn out story, but they both don't know what the other person's been assigned to. And it's just funny to see that dynamic.
Well, you're being a tricky person. It's like just that little bit. That's the similarity, though. You can see that between Bandler, ESTP, and Erickson. They're both expedient, but it's like different. One's just much more direct and blunt about it. The other one's a bit more subtle. So, you know things in NLP about the values and the beliefs. And I thought you did know about. Did you know about the values and beliefs in NLP?
Refresh my memory, perhaps.
Okay. So, from typology and from Enneagram, you know what people's values are. They're very STP about it, where they will say, "Oh, a belief is a generalization built around a value." It's like, no, it's something I really believe in. It says, no, it's a generalization. So it's like that STP thing of, this is situational. This is what the present situation matters. You're generalizing across contexts. And if you generalize, you can be rigid. So they want people to be as flexible as possible. Mm-hmm. So if somebody has a value and they generalize from that, they have this thing called the criteria ladder, where they want to get values opposed to each other. And they give the example of somebody who has the problem of that they want to talk to other people more, but they give the example of small talk. Is that the one? There's something in here called the criteria ladder.
Okay, so what you're talking about is people using a generalizability, and they don't want them to do that. They want them to balance out a little bit more, not speak in extremes.
Yeah, it's they take something and they come up with a generalized rule. It's a typology. It's a typology thing where STPs, they're very expedient and they want the current situation. So NLP is like trying to get in the viewpoint of very intelligent STPs, because one was ESTP and one was ISTP. John Grinder, he was the linguist, and so they don't want anybody in what they would call limiting beliefs. So
yeah.
So
okay.
so ESTP will see INFP as you are rigid and you have limiting beliefs. INFP will see ESTP as you are unscrupulous and have no principles. Sanna is here! Now we can have a proper hangout. Can you hear us, Sanna? Oh no. Having problem. So as soon as I can hear Sanna, I will shut my trap. So here's an example of the criteria ladder thing. So there's different values. So say somebody wants to get better at small talk. And so the things that move them towards it, or they want the connection with the person. You can say what have we got? Oh, it's weird that they've got things that you move in them. It's like putting different values at against each other and trying to get the highest ones. And so it's things like, is your privacy so important that you're willing to be alienated? Are you willing to feel alienation in order to maintain your privacy? Is preventing your exposure so important that you're willing to give up feeling connected? So you're willing to not feel connected so that you won't be exposed. And it's bringing the things in opposition. to each other. Yeah, unfortunately, Sanna, and then somehow it's about eliciting all of the values, all of the issues, and then maybe reframing them and putting them in different things. It's all very short, and I'm not going to be able to do it well. But somebody like you could take something like this and make it look good.
I want to share how I actually ended up getting into NLP.
Right.
And I wish Sanna could be on this call so she could hear this too. So while I was studying for, hopefully she can hear this. Okay. So I got into NLP because I was studying different theories of therapy. And there's a theory of therapy called solution-oriented
We can hear you, Sanna.
therapy.
Go on, Raquel.
Oh, no problem. Yes. Okay. So there's a form of therapy called solution-oriented therapy, and what that focused on was first of all, therapy basically focuses on cognitive distortions for the most part, very very cognitive thing. So in solution-oriented therapy, what they were saying is the extremes, using always and never, using language that like, oh, everything, my emotional reactivity is always a 10. It's either a 10 or it's a 1. And they were saying getting down to these gray areas, stop being all women are this way, all men are that way, whatever it may be, because that's a cognitive distortion, getting out of that and having more variance and variability in things. Well, when I was searching that and how we do use linguistically things like always and never, and that shapes our perception, that's how I got into NLP. I was like, oh, okay, so not only always and never, but the way that you put verbs, in a certain place, the certain words that you use are impactful in how you perceive things, how you interact with other people. And that's how I ended up getting there.
Yeah, so someone like Virginia Satir, she would see how people are making these mistakes, and maybe they're making and she was a family therapist, and seeing things like if someone does something, they make a complex equivalence between that and something else, as if it's a little bit like this. This is a not quite related, but it will give you an idea. Somebody who's looking away, someone will say, oh, you're looking away, you're not listening to me. So they make the complex equivalence between, oh, because they're not looking at you, they're not listening. And so it can mean various little things like that, where they assume that A means B, and it doesn't mean that. And people can miscommunicate over these little things, where they assume A is B. And you might get that with NFPs, because of these intuitive leaps. You might get a lot of things where these connect. Oh, this means this, which why they can have a tendency to be either bang on or not.
Someone once told me, and it's always put a doubt in my mind, that someone who was really skilled in personality was like, "Are you sure you're not an INFP?" And I was like, "What?" Because I do that intuitive leaps.
Yep.
That's just a conspiracy theory out there. I don't think that's true. I'm INFJ, or I'm ENFJ. I have actually hung on to INFJ for a while, but no, I don't think so.
Yeah, this is one of the things that comes out with the interaction style is the body language in the presence. The in-charge types, ESTJ, ENTJ, ESTP, and ENFJ, have more confident body language, whereas I'm on my territory at the moment because we're doing this hangout, but in my wheelhouse, comfort zone, that kind of thing. But generally, INTPs and INFPs and ISFPs and ISFJs don't have a lot of strong body language. Now, with ISFP, they're probably for an SP. They are the weakest, but they're still pretty strong compared to others. Can Sanna hear us?
Hello?
Yes! I'll be quiet. So, Sanna, Raquel is here.
I have to use my phone. This is
right.
And not here for very long, actually. Today, I don't know if you guys celebrate, but today is Mother's Day in the U.S. So
yeah, we do.
So, Sanna, have you got a fantastic question for Raquel?
No pressure. I don't know. What have you been talking about?
It has to be the best one.
Raquel, have you ever done any therapies for, say, depression?
Oh yeah.
Right. What about, how about that then?
Um,
If you go through a
I'm actually
few.
more I'm more interested in hearing what Santa has to say about art therapy because this is
All
something
right.
that this is something that I use the techniques. I'm not 100% art therapy based, and honestly, I've never been through. Here and there, I've done art therapy, but I've never been through the process or like. Um, I support it and believe it, and I mean, depression. I've worked with. You can do cognitive stuff and you can do art therapy stuff, but I'd really like to hear more about what she's got to say.
What was the question? Like, yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Sorry,
tell me all
I'm just
about it.
kind of confused. I was really pissed at my my computer, who apparently doesn't want to work
Yeah.
anymore. So,
In summary, I would say, Sanna, just talk about your art therapy.
eh. Well, what am I supposed to say? Sorry, I'm just completely lost regarding what you've been talking about.
Go on, Raquel.
Okay, so in art therapy, what are they saying is what helps people recover? What is it? The experience? What is it that helps people uh, recover from depression, anxiety, go through life's problems with the use of art?
Well, for me personally, the kind of the direction that my training takes is it's very solution focused. So we don't really do the we don't analyze a lot about the past. We mostly focus on where the person is right now and what they could do right now, even if it's just a small step, to start figuring out where they need to go. In general, I think art therapy is good because um, it's kind of like an indirect way to approach the person's psyche. So even if the person doesn't quite know what the problem is, surprisingly often when they start just painting it, they start having insights into their state. So it's a very, in a way, it's a very gentle approach because you don't need to be able to verbalize your issues. You don't even need to try doing that, but you're still able to approach them. And sometimes you can get pretty emotional or deep insights just completely out of the blue because of the way creativity works, sort of. Does that make sense? Or I think you're both muted.
Raquel, you muted yourself. I didn't do it. I've not got the control panel anymore. If there's some.
I did. Oops.
For a moment, I freaked out because I thought my sound broke.
I see. So we're really not focusing on the past. We're focusing on the here and now and moving forward. But occasionally, it can open up some things that, well, I mean, from my own experience, it can open up some feelings from the past, but it's not really concerning that. It's like, how do we move on from it now?
Yeah, it's not the focus. Obviously, if something comes up from the past, we're gonna go, we're gonna cover it. We're not gonna say, oh, we don't think about that. No, it's just that we're more concerned about helping them move forward than we are about digging up,
Mm-hmm.
what happened 10 years ago.
Okay, so I have a couple cases like this, and I find this with a lot of artists I talk to as well. I've had a couple cases like this. It individuals who are artists and are afraid to produce art because they don't want to be triggered by past experiences. They don't want to touch certain emotional things that need to be touched in order to create. Um, they are afraid that if they start getting into art and these feelings come up, that it's going to kick them back to a bad place. What do you do?
I think with art therapy specifically, we we have a lot of different exercises to use, and I would try and I actually just had one of those cases. What I would do is I would simply choose an exercise that has a very clear focus on something that doesn't touch that specific issue. It can still happen because I find like the psyche wants to push them out. But for example, if you specifically select an exercise that has a goal of being more empowering rather than digging out the focusing on the problem, you just kind of take it into a different direction because your focus is going to be very concrete. It's going to be on the painting. It's a physical process. And if I tell you, you know, paint something empowering to you, there's less likelihood that you're going to be automatically focusing on the problem that you don't want to deal with right now. But
What
it can still kind of, you know, if it's a really serious issue, it can still appear. We just have to kind of be careful with it.
What about this idea that people can only create art if they are depressed or if they have some sort of, I don't even want to know what to call it. They have some just sort of existential issue. That's the only time that they could create art.
Well, I personally draw a very distinct difference between my quote unquote normal art and art therapy, because they are kind of different things. When you personally, in my experience, when you create art just to create art, it's not necessarily a therapeutic process. It can be, but it's much more about expressing yourself, just purely expressing yourself. Whereas art therapy is the way we do it. There are very clear, concrete exercises that aim for a specific outcome. It's not just random paint a picture. It can be, but most of the time it's not. It's you don't. In my experience, it feels different because you're not focused about, am I going to make this a nice piece of art? Because that just doesn't enter it when it's an exercise. It can be, you know, completely abstract. It can be just a page full of colors without anything recognizable. It's it just has a different kind of motivation when you do it. I don't know if I don't know if this is the same for everybody, but it's definitely been my own experience.
This kind of flags my mind as maybe an indicator of pathology. Uh, that when people go into this art therapy process, if they're saying things like, I can't create art unless I'm depressed or whatever it may be, it's like, where's your self-esteem? You know, and we need to take ourselves out of this egocentric way of thinking that art is not about you. Art is actually about what people it is people's perception. It's not the piece, it's what people take from it. And of course, what you take from it also, if you want to call it art or not. But I was even trying to tell some of my starving artists that there is a picture of a toilet and it has made lots of money. It's really famous and it is legitimately a picture of a toilet. You really didn't
Right,
have to do anything, you know?
right.
So it kind of, when these things come up too, in instances like that, it does kind of share with me, maybe there's something, you know, some sort of cognitive distortion going on or some sort of underlying thing.
I think a lot of the people that are not artists, their main concern seems to be, I can't draw or I can't paint. which is not a concern with art therapy because it doesn't matter if you can or not. It's an expression of yourself. You don't have to have any kind of technique. Well, I mean, you have to be able to hold a brush. That's it.
Yeah.
You can do it with your mouth if you want to. I mean, who cares? It's just being able to fill the paper with whatever comes out of you, and it doesn't have to look nice or anything. And that was, for me, that was a revelation in the beginning, because my attitude about art was I have to make it look nice because I came from an artist background. But I learned it pretty early on. It's interesting to compare my actual art pieces to my art therapy pieces because they're very different.
A common techniques. I'm not a trained art therapist. I've attended some like lectures and stuff like that, so I use art. But one of the art therapy interventions that I give to my clients is using different body parts, putting paint on them, and just put them on the canvas. You know, like I've had feet, I've had hands, I've had elbows. What else? I mean, forearms, all sorts of things. And that has been, you know, the art therapy interventions.
Right. Yeah, it's a very flexible tool, I think, because there are literally as many different exercises as you can come up with. I mean, I have books and all kinds of material where I could theoretically pull exercises from, but in practice, I just kind of end up winging it a lot of the time because it depends on what they need, you know.
Now, going back to that critical thinking piece, I can't believe I just thought about this right now. Individuals who have depression, specifically depression, but also anxiety and things like that, the ability to think creatively and think critically significantly goes down because of the cognitive load caused by mental illness. So when we are using art therapy, it can help open up those channels and alleviate depression.
Obviously that's a very, vague statement. It can definitely happen. Yeah, I mean, that's why we do it, right? But I think specifically with the cognitive load, as you said, it helps that the art therapist gives very specific instructions. For example, you can have an exercise and you take it step by step and you tell the person exactly what they need to do, so that they don't have to be creative. They can just, go through the process. That can help sometimes.
Yeah, place it in such a place where it's not overwhelming, not too much direction, not no direction.
Right.
It's probably a very
it's always a matter of kind of, trying to feel out how much of both they need.
Guys, it is 9 o'clock. I have to move on to my next activity.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Raquel. Hopefully we can do this again.
Plug in. If we're ever going to talk about the BDSM, I'm there. I'm there.
Right. Yeah. What I'll do is I won't end the hangout right now. What I can do is I can show some of Sanna's artwork. Okay. So if you have to go now, Raquel, you have to go. Bye, Raquel.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
That's okay. But yeah, I'll just show some of your art, Sanna.
I can send you some of my art therapy work for comparison if you want.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, you could send that. Fine.
Because I think you've only seen sort of finished pieces.
Yeah. So yeah, if you could send that to me over Facebook, then I think that I've said this to some other people. I think that Google Hangouts are deprecating. They are. How do I click on that? Right. I think it's because I've read that it's going away next year, and that they've not maintained it for over a year, and so that this might explain certain issues with why people are having problems joining, such as yourself and Jonathan.
Well, that would be weird.
Yeah, like he's had problems where you've not been able to hear everybody in the Hangouts.
Yeah, I couldn't hear either one of you today.
Do you use a Mac?
And I didn't this time. I didn't try that one.
Right, because Jonathan uses a Mac.
This is Windows 10.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, for example, I can't share from this one now, and I've lost the control box. I can't switch my screen the right way around.
I just sent you a whole bunch of art therapy pieces.
Okay, so I will show them. Try again. What's going on here? Right, okay, that should log in. That's weird. I'm gonna try to. That's that one. It should log in. Okay, I have, and I don't want to log in as the same. I want to log in with the other account. Right, that should work. No, there is a problem connecting to this video call, and I will now try one other method to do it. Messenger. Right, so if that doesn't work, I will physically pick up my webcam and point it at the other laptop, even though it's at the moment blue tack down. But I will try this. If this link doesn't work, I will. Right, okay, I can see that there. Right. Oh, that's good. Right. Right. Opening. Right. So I'm clicked on the Hangout, on the link for this Hangout. Let's see if I can join. And right, I'm going to try and switch the account, and then if that doesn't work, I'll try again and then join as myself. Join as this account, and even if that causes problems.
I didn't have any trouble joining. That was not my problem. I just couldn't get the sound to work, which is weird.
Yeah, it's so. For example, using Debian, I have the control box for Hangouts, but I don't have it using OpenSUSE. So, right, I will. I'll just. Right, I can share my screen because that will be easier by doing it on Facebook. I clicked on it and it should respond, but these things don't respond as quickly as they should. Right, so what I'm going to do is I will share the browser, application window, Google Hangouts. Right, okay. Right, so this is going to be an infinite regression, folks.
There's like 10 of them.
Right. Right then. Oh yeah, I was going to say. Oh, good. Raquel has just subscribed to the channel. I had a good pop up there. Right, I was just going to say, Sanna, there's a little thing in NLP called submodalities, and I just wondered if the art therapy, because you say you concentrate on the future, like you can get people to imagine a future.
We concentrate on now. We concentrate on how the person is right now and what they need right now, instead of the past, where they came from.
I really like this one. I love the colors in this one.
But a lot of, I would say even most of my artwork from art therapy is kind of abstract in this manner. It's one of my ways to keep it separate.
Right.
I mean, I will occasionally do something like, that one, which is not as abstract, but it's still a very quick,
that's good,
symbolic thing.
Because you've got the darkness there on that side of it. that's working on an unconscious level for me. That's got things going on.
It's actually just my artist self coming in a little bit, trying to make it a little bit realistic. So,
Yeah. You know what I mean?
I can't help it.
Because it's got like the lighter elements and then the darker elements in terms of a nice sunny day kind of lighting, and then a kind of the darker aspects coming in. And then you've got that on the right as well with these sort of darker elements. So yeah, I just had to. Oh, that's nice as well.
Yeah, this is a lot of my art therapy pieces are actually like this. For some reason, this circular abstract thing comes out in my art therapy pieces a lot.
Right.
A lot. There's probably like 10 of them.
There's been a lot of improvising in this hangout. The technical difficulties, but when you've been doing them a few years, yeah, I like that as well. Oh, especially these figures. Like, they can look like some people crawling on the ground.
Oh, that's interesting.
In desperation.
I never saw that. I see what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Aha.
This one's still symbolic, but a little bit of a realistic touch in there as well.
Right. Okay. What about this sort of like peer? This idea of what, sort of like going into the deep end or take the leap?
This is actually a description of places that I enjoy. You have Hawaii on top, and then you have a sailing in Greece on the left, and then you have our cabin by the lake in Finland, and obviously a bird.
So what I'm thinking in terms of the NLP, what NLP would say about this, if you ask somebody to draw these things, you're getting them into a mental state of imagining those places in order to be able to draw it. So I'm wondering then, because NLP would then ask about, and I don't know if this is just a bit of fluff, like changing the image, changing certain aspects of the image, like those kind of things.
Those are the kind of things that art therapy. They're also art therapy techniques.
Right. So that means there's something to it. That aspect of NLP.
As you go forward, there will be one image that was one of those.
And sometimes they will talk about maybe if it's a disturbing image, making it smaller, replacing it with something else, maybe being associated in the image. So that's where you see it as if it's right in front of your eyes, or disassociated where you're sort of like standing outside of yourself. Right. To get a different viewpoint on things.
Yeah. We do use a lot of techniques that you might be familiar with. Right. Our therapy is quite flexible because you can do it in so many different situations.
Yeah. Because my thinking with Bandler when he was talking about that and Grinder is that it could be a little bit glib about it, especially the way they talked about it, where a little bit surreal there. I like that one. So what was the thought process behind this, Sanna?
I think this was a class where we were focusing on sexuality, actually. So it became kind of like a sensual type of. But I have to admit that I don't remember the details because it was some time ago. Right. But I remember the class.
So what's this idea of where, like with the hair, or what appears to be hair, and where it gets redder and darker?
Yeah, I think it was like being held down by the trees or brushes, or sort of like being chained. But not in the good way.
Right. Oh, not in a good way. Oh, Beta Project BDSM stuff. Right, okay. We'll go on to the next one. Ah, interesting. Is this about stuff going on inside somebody's head? And
This is
pressure.
an exercise on drawing a disease, and this is anxiety.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that fits. Oh, wow.
Yeah, this was the 3-part one. So those are actually 3 separate pieces of paper that are glued on top of each other. So this was like you do phase 1, and then you do phase 2, and then you do phase 3, and so it's combining.
So was this about despair?
It wasn't actually. This was a very intense. A very intense exercise, but it wasn't. I can't remember exactly what I was thinking, but I do remember that it released a whole lot of emotion as I was doing it.
Right. So we'd seen this one before. Did you talk about this one? Because what I did is I went back to the beginning because they were out of sequence.
Yeah, this was my I wasn't feeling too great at the time, but this one, it became kind of like a power animal for me once it was done. I mean, I thought I was putting down all kinds of angry thoughts and so forth, but then somebody else pointed out that it looks more like a power animal, like a symbolic strength, and I'm like, yeah, you're actually right. That's what it is.
Right. Maybe it's one of those things that can be looked at different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that one, I think we looked at that briefly. I don't know if you talked about this one.
No, there's actually hidden people that are important to me hidden in that picture in a symbolic manner.
Now, I like how it's sort of got this sort of whirling effect on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of almost as if very quick motion.
Right.
What's going on here with the eyes?
This was actually from art therapy, not from class, but this was actual art therapy I attended for a while locally. And I think, I can't remember the details, but I don't think I was too happy at the time.
Right.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
it became just kind of interesting.
Yeah. Were you very self-conscious at the time?
I don't know. I can't remember. This is like a...
Yeah, I don't want you to go back into a negative state.
No, I'm just saying it was probably almost a year ago. So
right, okay.
Or like last fall. So
yeah, to me, I get the idea of like there's a lot of scrutiny, a lot of examination, this being watched. That I get that kind of expression, and also the way that the main eye is coloured.
Right.
In a sort of a negative, semi-demonic way.
Yeah.
Right. I think you sent me another one, and then I'll go.
Yeah. This one, I don't remember the details, but I do remember that the point of this was that it was something very personal. The exercise.
Right.
I somewhere written down, but I can't remember. Either way, what I did was I took my. Well, you know that my mom died a few years ago. So I took a piece of a sheet that was hers. She had her initials in it. And I glued it onto the canvas. And then if I could remember what the rest of it was, I would tell you. But I can't remember. I just remember that the sheet was hers. So this is like my mom, symbolically my mom. About her.
Right, so that's going to be powerful, that one. I think I'm trying to get it to go in the other direction, because the one that I think the latest one that you sent, I found it now.
Right.
Here it is. Ah, this is
Yeah,
that
that
one.
Yeah,
You showed me this one before, that all the various people see different things.
Yep.
I can't remember. You said that there's something in there to look for.
Well, there's a lot of things to look for if you ask different people. So.
Ah, this
I
is
mean, I
your.
don't. I've never been told anyone what I saw in that one. I just like to hear what other people see it in.
A little bit of the your Rorschach test. But,
yeah, kind of.
right then, so I think that's all of them. I've got the. I'll try to show the other ones. Right.
I do have one more actually.
Oh, go on then. Go on then. Yep.
Because I have two of those. This one is also. This was the same exercise as the anxiety one.
Right.
It was just a different piece, different disease, as it were.
Right. Okay. It's just popped up. Yeah. Ah. Yeah. I've got a black cloud over me.
What do you think this one is? It's kind of.
Well, it's not ecstasy. It's a lot of bit of depression going on there, and
yeah, that's what it is. This is depression. Because the anxiety and this one, they were both part of the same exercise.
Some nice weather might help. Not totally, but especially if it's an external source for the depression.
Well, I mean, depression kind of feels like there's this cloud, dark cloud around you. You can't push through it. You can't see anything else that's outside.
Somebody once said something like chained to a black dog.
Yeah, that's another way of putting it. Yeah. I suppose this is more my way of putting it, but yeah, same principle.
Yeah. What I'll do now is I'll stop sharing screen so that then I can maybe it will work for the because things, because I'm gonna have to invest some time into learning OBS. Have you used that, Sanna? Because you are quite a technical person.
Have I used what, sir?
OBS.
I think I tested it a very long time ago, but that was for streaming through Twitch, but not really since.
Right, so we've got it to work.
Right.
So yeah, it was interesting comparing the two. In terms of what emphasizes. So to me, this emphasizes the stars more, whereas in this Lightung is more of an emphasis almost on the brighter aspect of it.
Well, yeah, that's because this one was taken at night, which is indoor lighting as far as I recall.
Yeah.
The other one was actually outside with natural light. So the other one is more like what it's really like.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, and I can see why now that you want things that look more like the real art, because to me that gives a different feeling. This second one, it gives me a different feeling about it. It draws my attention more to the stars and that aspect, and the lightning strikes.
Well, I mean, I want them to, like, this is my my real art, and
right.
I want the digital version to look like the real thing, because if I sell something and it doesn't look like the same thing, that's kind of problematic. Also, I want I do sell some of these as prints, Not this one yet because it's not online yet. But you know, it's also it's important to make it look as it should instead of just giving a vague idea.
Yep. And then we've got, you know what I call this one? I call it the Trump protester.
Okay. I actually worked on this one a little bit more. So there will be a new version. It's, you know, very mildly different, but there were some things that I felt I needed to fix.
Yeah. And I saw the one that you sent me before this. Right then. Interesting with the almost the sort of the black steam of the person coming off them.
Yep.
And then we have you and your parrots.
Yeah. I'm trying to use other subjects in my paintings, but a lot of the time it's still the parrots.
Well, it takes you to a happy place, and that's good. So anchoring. So your memories, positive memories, are anchored to the parrots.
Yeah.
Right there. I don't know if there's anything else. Yeah, so it looks like all of those NLP techniques, because a lot of those techniques are sort of like cribbed from other areas and other therapies.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, it's not like art therapy invented, you know, new stuff. I mean, for some stuff, yeah, sure. But, you know, these are principles that a lot of different people have used in a lot of different concepts. I mean, circumstances. So.
Yeah, because when Banda was talking about it and John Grinder, I was a little bit skeptical. Maybe I thought it was a little bit glib when they were talking about people going into memories and tweaking. They call it the submodalities, so the various aspects of each sense. So it's like, what's the texture like? What's the lighting like? These various, and you saw there just with the heads, it gave a different impression just with that difference in the lighting.
Also, there's a concept, reframing.
Yeah.
Which I think covers a lot of that. But yeah, you can, I mean, you do it completely consciously, at least in art therapy. It's not like you go back or into something and you start lying yourself. That's not the point. It's just that you find different approach to it, or you figure out how it should be changed to make you feel better about it, but you're completely conscious of doing this. So it's just more like a creative approach instead of delusion, you know. Because I had a problem with, I thought it was going to be like, you know, brainwashing yourself to pretend that it was different, but that's not really what it does.
One of the things with Enneagram and sevens do this a lot, where they will imagine where they want to get to, and they don't have a boundary between now and that thing, and they live in that future reality of that goal rather than actually going towards it. Whereas for other people, it fits in with the well-formed outcomes of imagining where you want to get to, but that thing has to be specific and appealing and realistic and timed, so smart. And then it's like imagining yourself in that goal, making it as real as possible, and almost stepping into that future. And what will you feel like when you have that outcome? Almost, so they talk about the outcome of the outcome.
Yeah, that is also something we do in art therapy, and also we often figure out the small steps that you need in order to get towards that So not just, I want to be there, but also in a kind of sometimes in a concrete manner, sometimes in a more psychological manner, what you need to do to get there, or what you need to do next. That's the very solution focused approach. What to do next? How can I get one step closer?
So something you mentioned early on with Raquel, but I didn't want to interrupt, is when you talked about focusing on the outcome. And this is something that NLP mentions, where you really want to be outcome focused rather than problem focused, because if you're problem focused, you can then start getting into the blame game.
Right. Yeah, you can get stuck. You can get very stuck in the problem. That's definitely true. That's all therapies. That's not just our therapy. It's very common to get stuck, just not being able to see outside the problem.
So, seeing as I've mentioned these things that these NLP things are also in art therapy, perhaps you'll give NLP a second look.
We have this book for class
Right.
that we had to read. So, I mean, they included NLP. The only reason I'm a little skeptical about NLP is because it's not taken seriously, and it's considered pseudoscience by some.
It's just like typology, though.
Yeah, but I don't have to use typology for counseling. That's like a separate. That's my thing. I'm not trying to make it serious.
Well, it's the thing. The thing is with NLP, it's a whole bunch of techniques. So it's just take each technique and judge each technique on its own merits. Because there's definitely things in there that are dodgy.
Right. It's probably those dodgy ones that led to the but yeah, I mean, I do believe. I think that NLP has similar techniques that are already used in many other systems. So.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these techniques were in the mid-70s, and they modeled, because it started by modeling Virginia Satir, a family therapist, Milton H. Erickson, a hypnotherapist, Fritz Perls, the Gestalt therapist. What else about? The reason why NLP gets a bad name, in my opinion, is because their courses are pay and you pass, and so there's no standards. And also, a lot of the people who go on the NLP courses are, there might be introverted NTs who, when they use NLP, they use it in a bad way, in a ham-fisted way. Whereas when somebody like Raquel uses it, and they can use the tools well,
right,
they make it look good.
Yeah. I'm sure there are good tools there. So if you use the good tools and not the dodgy ones.
But even then, it's the ability to use the tools. So, for example, here's an example of something that's dodgy in NLP, if it's taught incorrectly. Mirroring in order to get rapport. And then an INTJ and INTP might exactly copy the other person, and then the other person will notice it. And then it's almost like they're mocking the other person by exactly copying their body language. But here's the good one. This is a good one, in my opinion. If you match the other person's breathing rate, then they'll end up talking in a similar way.
Right.
So it's how you do it, not just blatant copying. And so little things like, if somebody scratches their ear, maybe half a minute later, somebody brushes a bit of fluff, imaginary fluff, off their knee. And so that's called cross-matching. So it's the subtlety of it. Or, I don't do stuff like that because I'm try too hard to concentrate on the other person, because I've got concentration problems enough. Things that I mentioned when Raquel was here, the meta model. You don't use it to pick people up on all the little mistakes that they make. You use it to get an idea of their map of the world.
Right.
And of course, we do that now with functions. And hopefully you can be around for the hangout. But we're going to do soon, folks. May 24th, Carol Linden talking about the language of the functions. Right then. Do you think I should?
I had something I was trying to say and I kind of forgot.
Oh no.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah, no. I was just gonna point out that yeah, I'm sure those are very valid techniques, but I think when I do counseling, I just have this mood of I'm very intensely focused on the person. I don't
Yeah.
really think about, mirroring or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just really focused.
Yeah, and that's the best way to do it. I mean, any of these techniques should be, maybe the technique's not good in itself, but maybe it draws your attention to something else, and it's best if it's unconscious, an unconscious competence.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't tell you that I'm doing any of those things. I just know that I really hyper focus
Yeah, that's
on the
great.
person.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Because also from the other person's point of view, they feel seen, they feel connected,
Right.
because of that focus.
Right.
Right then. So I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything else?
No.
Right then, I'll stop the broadcast now, folks. So lots of adaptation there.